I had a rather interesting experience recently. I wrote about a certain topic, which is what I'm talking about today, and I didn't realize that it was affecting one part of my life. Like, when you're younger, you don't really have many parts of your life, it's very few. But when you grow older, there's many different parts of your life. There's like your work, there's your relationships, there's your own self improvement, there's so many other different things that you're balancing at the same time, just making sure that everything is staying alive and keeping you alive and those sorts of things. And it's not something, well, most of the time, it's not things that's forced upon you, but you have them a part of your life because they are what make your life what it is. It makes your life feel purposeful, I assume. For most people, for me, yes, of course. But yeah, I didn't realize that it was affecting one part of my life. And last night I had, of course, I'm going to share a personal anecdote, but last night I had a sort of experience that kind of made me realize that it was happening to me. So I think it was over the course of like last year. I was coming off of my own, well, a personal injury that I brought upon myself, and that kind of left me defeated in some way, in terms of like physical training. And after some time, I started to find my way back to a point where I could actually make progress in the way I wanted to. But I didn't realize that I was holding back a lot. Like there was a subtle underlying fear, or this thing inside that I had that I wasn't tending to, that I would somewhat ignore. I always had this urge to want to try and just push myself and just say screw it and go all in, and I was always ignoring that. And then for some reason last night I was like screw it, man, I don't care, and I pushed myself beyond a limit that I thought was one of my own limits, of course. And I every time I did something, well, of course, when you train, there's reps, but every time I did something, it was like a fight. Like it was difficult, but like every single rep, as I always say, was a fight and like a struggle. It felt like it was the last one, but I pushed through, and it felt sort of rewarding in the end. I know it's sort of vague, but it's a sort of anecdote to to sort of explain my point of sometimes we all, I guess it happens to many of us in different parts of our lives. It could be work, it could be relationships, but many of us get to this point where we sort of lead a life of quiet desperation, you know, where we have this urge inside that we want to do something for ourselves, that we want to achieve something for ourselves. We have this urge, but for some reason, over time, we have a lot of excuses that come our way to sort of give us a good enough reason to not pursue this urge, to not do it, to take the easy way out, to not pursue the things that we think is going to be best for us, to hold back, to not stand up for ourselves, to not be courageous, right? We find the reasons to do these things. Oh, I don't have time to go and work out. Oh, I don't want to have the conversation with that person because it's going to be awkward. Oh, it's a waste of time. I don't want to do all these different things, right? We have all these different excuses. It could be a wide range of things, but you understand what I'm trying to say. There's a whole lot of excuses that we could have to sort of push us away from the things that we need to face for ourselves. And that sort of has an effect on us because it leads us to this life where over time we're not taking care of these different parts of our lives, and it sort of makes us suffer in silence, if that makes sense. Our relationships aren't going as well. Our work isn't progressing as well. We're not doing as well as we should be there, right? We aren't feeling as good about ourselves, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, because we've not been taking care of ourselves. We've not been making ourselves a priority. And that's become a sort of issue over time because we've been neglecting ourselves. So we've sort of led ourselves to this point where we're suffering in silence, and we sort of, I guess, over time find a way to survive with that, and that becomes our comfort zone. We've become comfortable with the fact that we're living a life of quiet desperation. And is that any way to live? Is that any way to live? I think it was Carl Jung that once said that if someone refuses to experience life, they must give up their desire to live. So in other words, they must commit partial suicide. Is that any way to live? To become some sort of zombie who's just surviving life and not really doing things in life to become something better than they were, who's just, maybe they made progress to some point and then suddenly they're just stagnated, and they're staying at a certain position and they're not making progress in terms of their own life and their own journey, and pushing themselves outside their comfort zone. They've become comfortable with being in a sort of suffering state of mind, that they're not doing things that's good for them, right? You know those sorts of things. Is that any way to live? Is that any person to be? How can we be our authentic selves? How can we be someone that's good in our relationships? How can we be some, well, authentically good in our relationships, in our work, in every single thing that we do that makes our life what it is? How can we be that certain way if we choose to commit partial suicide, if we just ignore the urges that we have to be better in the things that we hold dear to us. And if we ignore those urges, how can we actually be authentically ourselves in those parts of our lives? It isn't any way to live, right? It isn't any way to live. So more than anything else, from my own experience, right? We should often take a moment to consider what's best for us, even if it means standing up for ourselves and coming out of our comfort zone. If that means what we have to do, then do it. But we have to take a moment to consider what's best for us in terms of our work, in terms of our relationships, in terms of whatever it is for us, our mental well-being and our health and all those sorts of things. We have to take a moment to consider what's best for us. We have to look at our lives. We have to take stock. It's not just something that we do and then suddenly it's done forever for the rest of our lives. It has to become a habit. We have to check in with ourselves, like maybe every week or something of that sort, just to make sure that our lives, our different parts of our lives, are well balanced and we're actually making progress, and we're not choosing the easy way out. We're not choosing to suffer in silence. We're not holding back when we know we should be pushing forward. We need to see that we're pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone, and we're not pushing ourselves towards a point where we're living a life of quiet desperation, because that's no way to live and experience life, right? It's no way to live and experience life by committing partial suicide. That's just us going through life. We're not growing through life. That's not any way to actually live and be happy and feel purposeful and fulfilled. There's no way to live life if we ignore these urges in ourselves to be better, to grow and explore our potential. So we need to build up the habit to take stock of ourselves so that we can actually see what we're doing and what we're not doing, and then start to see what we can do that's best for us. Maybe it means having that conversation at work with someone that you need to talk to. Maybe it means negotiating your salary. Maybe it means trying to study something new. Maybe it means having that difficult conversation with a person you love, with your family, right? It could mean getting a workout done, changing your diet, whatever it means for you. Just stop doing the things that's holding you back from you becoming the best version of yourself. Because once you start to take time and see the things that are best for you, and you start to invest in them, then over time, as you make those your habits, over time you're going to start to bring out the best in you. And that's what the world is going to see. Whatever that means for you, whatever your greatness means for you, whatever the best of you means for you, you're going to start bringing that out for yourself in terms of every aspect of your life. And that's essentially what we want, right? To bring out the best version of ourselves in every aspect of our lives, to make sure that we're authentic in every aspect of our lives. You don't want to be partial in any parts of our lives. You don't want to commit partial suicide with any parts of our lives. We want to make sure that we're not suffering in silence, but we're growing through every single thing that we're facing, right? And that's making our lives feel purposeful. That's what we need to do for ourselves, right? So I just shared a simple example in the beginning, and that was something that happened to me last night. It's something that can happen to us at any point in our lives. That's why we need to make this a habit, to check in with ourselves and make sure that we're not holding ourselves back, that we're not suffering in silence, that we're not leading a life of quiet desperation, because that's no way to live a good life, right? So I hope that in some way, if you find, even if it's in your own thoughts and your own worries and your own fears, if you find that you're being convinced to lead a life of quiet desperation, or you're suffering in silence, I hope that this helps you sort of find a way to find the courage to stand up for yourself, and maybe take charge of your life and do the things that will bring you value in terms of your own life. Of course, if you have any questions, let me know. If there's certain things that didn't make sense, of course, let me know. We can talk about it. Yeah, until the next one, I guess, take care out there, be safe, and peace.